that we did not know whether or not they would enter across the college football landscape, and they are entering now that the portal is officially open. And then there can always be other whispers, right, behind the scenes, college football, coaches talk, agents talk, players talk, media people talk. There's an exchange of information that goes on behind the scenes. And so one of those ways you're going to find out players that are either in the portal or planning on enter the portal, or even just possibilities. And so you want to be ready. You got to be equipped with as much information as possible, kind of like scouting a team, right? You don't go into the game and say, oh, playing Clemson this week, guess we should get on that. No, you ever been in a coach's office? They have giant binders on each team. Is there already something lined up with another school? You have to know these things because, you can waste a lot of time otherwise. So I thought that was an interesting kind of window into the preparation from Darren, in that, man, there are a lot of players in college football. When you think about all the different levels you can pull from, you're not just talking about Power 4 guys. You're talking about G5. You're talking about FCS. You're talking about Division II. I mean, you want to have a really clear picture. So a lot of work goes into all this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking to a high school coach yesterday who had his former player announce they were going the portal, and I kind of reached out just to check in, and he was giving me his thoughts on the guy. And at the end of it, he said, and a phenomenal kid. And so I think we've seen South Carolina, not that you're going to always bat 1,000, because that's just not going to happen. But I think the difference for South Carolina has been that they have, for the most part, been able to get portal additions that fit who they are as a program. Like you look at Kyle Kennard, you look at D Knight. I mean, the more we saw from D Knight this season, the more we heard about D Knight, the more you kind of heard about his story, his personality, what he's all about. I'm convinced, and this is nothing against, and maybe y'all tell me if there's somebody else. I am convinced that Demetrius Knight is the unicorn of portal pickups. Like when you look at the fact that, and there's been some great portal guys, Kyle Kennard this year, of course. You get back to adding Spencer and how big that was for the program. But to go out and get a guy under the radar as Knight was and bring him in, and him not only be a phenomenal linebacker, not only be a guy that's about to get picked pretty dang high in the NFL draft, but also to be the consummate professional, the leader that he is, just everything he's meant to this program in one season. I don't know how many of those guys there are out there, but to me, that's what you're modeling your portal recruiting after is, and certainly for Carolina, from a linebacker standpoint specifically, you're hoping to add that skill set, right? But from a general standpoint, the total package is what D Knight is. And so to go back to what I was saying about that coach text to me, man, especially if a guy has done it at like there are very few Rocket Sanders, Spencer. If a guy has done it at the Power 5 level and the physical evaluation part is a given, the most important information you're going to get on a portal guy is going to be, does he fit my culture? Because it is very, very easy, because of the time element of this thing, it's very easy to get caught up and say, oh, we need that guy. But I think if you're going to be as portal heavy as South Carolina has been, which it's worked out to this point because they've gotten the right people, I think incredibly important to continue that, because we do know there is a lot of interest in this South Carolina program right now.
Yeah, and, I mean, Beamer's mentioned it, I think. Darren Usher, the Director of Player Personnel and Recruiting, mentioned it on our podcast on GC Live the other day, the conversation that you referenced, Wes. They've turned down some guys already. And there can be a variety of reasons for that. And a lot of times, look, transfer portal recruiting is similar to recruiting. You look at a list, and you could say, and to be clear, this is just an example, but if a guy, this player's transferring from Georgia, we got to go get him. He's from Georgia. That doesn't mean that he can't play or wouldn't be a great fit, but it doesn't mean he is just because he came from Georgia, right? And we have seen South Carolina have success with, you mentioned some great kind of case studies there. Spencer Rattler was a former 5-star number 1 quarterback in the country, Oklahoma. Rocket Sanders was a pretty highly rated recruit, but he had rushed for 1,400 yards in the SEC. So you got those guys. And then you have some others. Kyle Kennard, good player. Missouri wanted him, Florida State wanted him out of the portal, but people weren't sitting around on Twitter all day wondering where Kyle Kennard was going to go. Like, he wasn't a national storyline. Now he is. Now he made a name for himself. And
he's at an awards event tonight, right? For top.
I can't remember which one.
Is it top defender or top pass rusher?
Is it Nagurski? Is it Lombardi? Steve Fink, help us. Text in if you're listening.
They may be on their way right now.
They may be on their way. So, point is, you can get guys from different places, and the staff has turned down guys from bigger schools sometimes. They've turned down guys that have come on campus. And look, and Darren talked about this the other day, Wes. NIL is part of it. You aren't going to recruit in the portal nowadays. I would go as far as to say you will never recruit a portal prospect who doesn't ask about NIL. Ever. Maybe 2 years ago there were some guys that didn't really, now it's going to come up because it's kind of like the NFL. If you're a free agent, that'd be like walking, I've got 5 teams that want me, and I'm just like, yeah, I'll sign with Atlanta, I'll sign with Carolina, and you don't even talk about the contract. Like, that's not realistic, right? But you do want to, as a staff, vet, like you said, the type of person it is, and are they only motivated by the highest NIL offer, right? So that fit is important, and that's why I think South Carolina struck gold with the last portal class because of the type of players they got, the type of kids they got. And to your point, some of those are going to be really hard to find again. But I think South Carolina's in a good spot from an NIL standpoint. They're in a good spot from a momentum standpoint. And there are a lot of really good players in the portal, where there are a lot of good kids in the portal that have the mix that you're looking for. Maybe not to the D Knight level, but I think they'll be able to find some good fits. And they've got a lot of needs in this portal class.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the needs later on in the show. Chris, I think it's just it's going to be a different portal offseason for Carolina. Now, in the category of great problem to have, I think, and one thing we've been told is they are going to be patient to an extent. I've phrased it like aggressive but selective.
That's a good, yeah.
And they're going to have to be. And when I say aggressive, I mean they are going to take guys from the portal, 100%. But does that mean you have to jump and sign or land commitments from your 2 or 3 linebackers this week, a receiver this week? No, because you don't know who else is going to be in there. So I think there is some value to just locking in a spot. Like if you're at a position where we know they've got needs at linebacker, we know there's elite needs on the interior defensive line, is there some value to checking the box on one of those slots if you find the right fit right off the bat and kind of having it handled? Yes, I would say yes, but also you can't just, quote, fill your needs right off the bat, because that's probably not the most efficient way to do it, because you don't know who else is going to be in. So you're kind of walking a tightrope the entire time, because one thing I do find, getting a portal guy on campus quickly, getting those visits locked in when let's say player A is already in the portal, they're ready to knock this thing out. They're ready to know where they're going. That first 24 hours, I feel like is massive, man. Because how many guys have we seen get to South Carolina and Carolina gets them on campus early in the portal process, and there's probably 1 or 2 other schools, and it's either they commit while they're on campus or it's they give the coaches the nod and say, hey, I'm going to take one more, but then they end up signing with Carolina. we've seen that a lot, where get a guy early in this process because they just want to get it knocked out. Very, very important. So, all right, y'all. Up next, we're going to talk about offensive coordinator, what it means for South Carolina as Dow Loggins takes the App State job, and where Carolina could turn next at that position. You're listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game.
Our friends over at Integrated Media can do an outstanding job at your home or even at your business with any of your audio-visual needs. Christmas coming up, so it just kind of dawned on me, guys. Great time to give Michael and Nathan and the team over at Integrated Media a call, because you may be thinking about a gift for someone. You may be thinking about, hey, I'm going to get myself a Christmas gift. I'm going to trick out that new man cave. I need a new TV. I want to get the outdoor setup situated. Wireless sound bars, surround sound, anything that you've ever wanted from an AV standpoint, they can handle it for you. If you need some inspiration or some examples of their past work, Integrated Media Columbia on Facebook and on Instagram. And then, of course, you can go to their website at integratedmediainc.com. You don't have to go to the big box stores. They can source the equipment for you, let you know what the best equipment is for your home, and they can install it for you. They've been to my home. They've been to Wes's. Let them come out to yours, too. 803-948-8327.
All right, welcome back in. Wes Mitchell here. Chris Clark, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. South Carolina gets the news that offensive coordinator Dow Loggins is off to App State this weekend. New head coach there. And I'll be honest, Chris, like I had heard a little bit about App State and Carolina potentially, but I did not put the pieces together at all.
What were you thinking, Sean Elliott or something?
Well, I was thinking Sean makes sense. I was thinking Clayton White, like
Mike Fury.
Yeah, like
maybe. Like that.
I did not know that A plus B equals C. Like this was was this on your radar?
It was not.
Yeah, like just be, we try to like we'll tell people, hey, this was in the works. We were tracking this.
Well, and
full transparency, it was not for me.
It was not for me, and I had just out of curiosity because App's a good job, like I like keeping up with all the different movement in the coaching industry, and so when the job came open, I'd asked around to some people that were tracking the search, and Dowell's name did not come up. I mean, the ones that you heard the most, Neil Brown.
Yeah, that seemed to be floating around out there a lot.
He recently dismissed from West Virginia, so Neil Brown was one. Casey Woods, who's the OC at SMU and works closely with Brett Lashley, was another one. There were some other names I can't really recall in there, but yeah, Loggins did not come up. And I thought it was very interesting that the first public mention, unless I'm mistaken, unless somebody, no, I saw that, a couple days before. Feel free to correct me. I didn't see Dow Loggins mentioned publicly until it was like, yeah, he's the target, right? So I just think it was a fascinating search with the way it played out. But yeah, not really on my radar at all.
Yeah, so, and somewhat worth mentioning that we've seen a lot of coaches who, like App State is a great job traditionally. How much have we seen your sort of non-Power 4 schools affected by portal and NIL and all those things in today's college football landscape? Chris, it seems to me like you're seeing more and more coaches. I mean, we saw a Power 4 head coach say, "I'd rather go to Ohio State and call plays."
Yeah.
We've seen a coach with a very good job say, "I'd rather go to Florida State and call plays." And so this is a little bit of reverse. Now, I think very clearly Dow Loggins wants to run the show. Like he wants to take a shot at being a college head coach. And obviously the job he did with Norris, bringing him along. And for all the people who have negative things to say about Dow Loggins' tenure here, I mean, the guy definitely knows ball, and I think you have to give him credit for taking an offense with a completely different skill set last year into an offense with guys that, I mean, night and day. Spencer and Lenoris are two of the most talented quarterbacks South Carolina's ever had, but they're very, very different in terms of how you would create an offense around them. And to be able to do that, to watch the offense get better as the year progresses, to watch Lenoris continue to come along as the season progresses, I can see why App State makes this move, even though it was not on our radar. Now, I think we're probably getting a little out of bounds here for what people really want to talk about. The real thing people want to hear about is what's next for South Carolina.
Yes.
Like either wish Dow well. I'm sure there are some haters out there that are, whatever, moving on. What direction or what do you think will be important to Shane Beamer moving forward? And, let's address the elephant in the room. Is it as simple as you have a guy who used to work with Cam Newton and by all indications has done a very, very good job of tutoring Lenore Sellers this year in Mike Shula?
Yeah, and it's a little bit different even than the past, because a couple years ago, you would be looking at taking Mike Shula from basically an analyst role to the OC if you made this move. But it's different, right? Because since the NCAA relaxed these rules, yeah, Mike Shula was not one of the on-field coaches. He wasn't the tight ends coach. He wasn't a dedicated quarterbacks coach. He was, I think his title, senior offensive assistant, right? He was basically, though, because of the NCAA rules, a quarterbacks coach. Lenore Sellers, quarterback coach. And, you know, so I heard a couple things. You know, one of them was pointed out on the last SEC Inside that profiled the USC-Missouri game. They show Shane Beamer, one of the clips, and he's on the headset saying, Mike, make sure Lenore takes care of the ball here, right?
Heavily discussed clip.
Heavily discussed clip, right? And that's, you know, sometimes those things, too much gets made of those clips, those sound bites. But in this case, what it illustrated was what you've seen all season. If you were at Williams-Brice or on a road game, you could look down and you would see Lenore Sellers and Mike Shula down there talking, looking at the iPad, going over film. And so I've heard the same as you, Wes. In the building, there's a lot of respect for Mike Shula and the job he's done. I mean, yes, Loggins deserves credit for bringing Sellers along. Sellers deserves probably the most credit because he's just a super talented kid and great head on his shoulders, very smart. But Shula, from everything I've been told, people really praise the job that he's done helping bring Lenore along. And you can go back to his work with Cam Newton. You know, this is a guy that has been, you know, the head coaching tenure at Alabama really has nothing to do with it. He's got NFL experience, NFL OC experience. He's worked with a quarterback like Sellers, and he has worked with Sellers. One more thing I saw, Wes, I saw somebody online, probably more than one person. Sellers shouldn't have any say in the decision. That shouldn't go into it at all. And I understand what they're trying to say and that you don't want your team to pick your coaches.
Yeah.
But in this instance, you're crazy if you don't think Shane Beamer's going, Lenoris, what do you think? What do you think about if I made Mike the OC? Would you like that or not? Because if he says, oh, absolutely, there's you some validation. If he says, well, what about this? Then you think a little bit about it. Ultimately, this is Beamer's call, but Sellers is the guy you're building your team around. You're certainly building your offense around. You want somebody that he's comfortable with, and all indications are there's a good rapport between Sellers and Mike Shula.
And to that point, Chris, people who listen know I follow the Braves like crazy. And I feel like in professional athletics, and this is something that started to carry over to college athletics a bit as well. Maybe it always has. I don't know. But you talk about, hey, this team has a championship window. And it's, hey, take advantage of this championship window. And so, yeah, if somebody wants to make the point, like you said, of, hey, the players don't pick the coaches. In theory, yeah, that's 100% correct. Do you want a player making the call? Of course you don't. But you're going to have to value that feedback, and I'm sure Shane Beamer does, because you've got one or two more years with a potentially generational quarterback, Lenore Sellers. You've got Dylan Stewart to build your defense around on the other side of the ball. So in today's world, you've got to double down on doing everything you can to take advantage of that window. And in theory, if you take advantage of it and win, that sets you up to win into the future as well. But you've got to take advantage of your opportunities that are in front of you right this moment. And so, to me, the best move Shane Beamer can make at this point, whether it is Shula, whether it's someone else, and I did think it was kind of fascinating. Our guy Tommy Suggs, without being prompted last week, he could be prophetic on this one. He said, hey, I don't think Shula's getting enough credit for the job he has done working with Lenore Sellers. So we'll continue this conversation, and we'll talk a little bit more transfer portal. You're listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour here on The Game, presented by Firehouse Subs. All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Gold Line Framing in West Columbia, South Carolina. Obviously, it is it is time to buy those gifts. Your time is actually running out here soon. So for those people in your life that are just difficult to buy for, Goal Line Framing, Gallery and Gifts over in West Columbia, a great place to start, because I know if you got a sports fan in your life, they probably have some type of jersey or signed print or ticket stubs from old games, whatever it may be. They can take that memorabilia, those special things in their life, and take it to a next level so that it can go on the wall in the man cave, go on the wall in the office, whatever they see fit. Call them today, 803-739-1337, or if you just want to head on over there in person, 511 12th Street, West Columbia, South Carolina. That's our friends over at Goal Line Framing. I promise you, Kendall, Joni, great Gamecocks as well. They're going to take outstanding care of you at Goal Line Framing. All right, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark. Chris, some portal activity for South Carolina so far. None unexpected, I would say. If you haven't been online in the last, 15 minutes, Nick Elksness, former actually transfer into South Carolina, has announced he will enter the transfer portal. That is the latest name from the Gamecocks to either enter or announce that they are going to enter. And Beamer talked about this a little bit yesterday, but nothing new there in that we've talked about this before, man. Healthy transfers.
Yep.
That is kind of what we've used to describe players where they shake your hand, everybody, both sides kind of agree, and it's just, hey, coach, I want to play. And we've seen that with Elksness. We've seen that with Connor Cox at the tight end position. And, you can go through some of the guys at the wide receiver position. I don't have our tracker in front of me right now, but the guys we've seen for South Carolina enter the portal or announce they're entering the portal so far has been exclusively players that just were not quite in that rotation of players this year, where if you look at that snap count on PFF, you kind of get a view, hey, here are the guys that are impacting this team this year. Here are the guys that are in the rotation. And most of them, Chris, some of them, a couple of them younger guys, like DeBron Gatling is a red-shirting freshman. He'll have all 4 years left. But a lot of them are more guys that are starting to get to that point in their career where they may not be seniors yet, but they're starting to realize, hey, don't have as much eligibility left. There is no, for these classes, there is no COVID year. It's kind of like, hey, if you want to play, if you want to find a home where you can go start or be an impact guy, you're starting to learn, kind of run out of time, I should say. So that's been the case so far. Mm-hmm. To this point, Carolina has not lost to the portal what is the opposite of a healthy transfer, and that is an impact guy entering the portal.
Well, and you don't want to, you don't want to eliminate that possibility or totally take it off the table, right? We haven't heard whispers, there have been other cycles, portal cycles, Wes, where, we're tracking the possibility of, Jaheim Bell's going to go in the portal, Marshawn, guys like that, Jordan Birch. And frankly, there's been, and Shane Beamer's been open about this. It was mentioned on a broadcast of one of the games this year. Hey, there's some teams that would have loved to have Nikki Minori this offseason. He decided to come back, and others. And so I remember last year we were tracking that possibility. This year it's been more quiet on that front. Could there be some? Maybe. Just to kind of peel the curtain back a little bit, there hasn't been as much, frankly, as there has been in past years. So, look, for South Carolina, that means you're doing some things right. You go back to signing day, Carolina was able to flip some guys, but they also didn't have any guys flip from them on signing day. That's kind of what you want to that's how you want to structure things with the portal. You want to go out and land some guys. You understand that you're going to have some of those healthy transfers and those defections. Those are a positive overall. What you want to avoid is losing impactful star players who are going to play a significant role on your team in terms of starting or depth this year and into the future. And so far, they have done that, which is good. And I think that's something you got to credit Shane Beamer and his staff for, because obviously you had a really good year. That helps, your players understand the trajectory and buy into the trajectory. You're situated well from NIL to where you're not sitting around going, oh my gosh, how are we going to take care of this roster? So we'll see where it goes the rest of the window, but overall, so far, so good is the point.
Yeah, and I think, again, not all portal entries are created equal, but I would even say there are some where, like I said, it's just, hey, you're not playing, you want to play, both sides shake hands, move on. There are others that, let's be honest, when like a Juice Wells entered or a Marshawn Lloyd entered, that's fan freakout time, and you get it. Then, I think you see a lot of teams, especially if you recruit well, man, you will see a lot of teams have those entries where it's not a guy that has played yet, but they're maybe a little bit buried at the time. The staff may see a future for this player at South Carolina, but the player's saying, well, I want to play now. I want to be on the field. And I think those are guys you see throughout college football, and those are the ones that are a little bit wait and see for me. It's more like we'll find out next year, the year after, if that guy makes an impact at whatever school they go to. I would even dare say, Chris, to this point, I don't see a ton of guys on Carolina's list of guys that are leaving that necessarily even fall in that window. Now, I've said it before. I do think DJ Braswell is a talented kid. Like, has he been behind other guys this year? Yes, he has. And we expect them to be active in the portal at running back again this year. So could it be one of those scenarios where, he's just not going to play at Carolina? Yes. Would it be shocking if Braswell went somewhere else and had like a Rashad Amos? Rashad went to Miami of Ohio and rushed for 1,000 yards.
And then bounced back
around. He had a weird portal offseason last year.
Weird year.
I think he's entering again. Did not play at Ole Miss this year. Just, I don't know. Anyway, would it be shocking if a Tyshawn Russell, who, I think is a talented kid, but just hasn't quite put it together at South Carolina, would it be shocking if he found a home, got some playing time, ended up having a nice college career? That would not be shocking to me at all. But point being, that's losing guys like that is just a part of college football right now. The important thing, if you are South Carolina, is take care of your superstars and your heavy impact guys and get them back, and then start to work your way down to the rest of the roster and retain them. When we had Darren Usher on the podcast last week, he brought it up. He's like, look, player retention is not talked about enough. Like that is a huge part of the plan for any team, certainly the plan at South Carolina. And they spent a large portion of last week working on that aspect and making sure. I think this is where your information, your relationships is so key, because there have been times, Beamer mentioned it, I don't think they thought Marshawn Lloyd was going to enter the portal, and then he's gone.
It changes in a day or two. Yeah, he goes home and then it changes. I mean, how different would this year have looked, Wes? I mean, you can still plug in Kyle Kennard and Rocket and some of the other guys. How different would it have looked if, Tonka Hemingway, Nick Emanwari, TJ Sanders, OD Fortune, some of the guys that could have hit the portal and would have commanded, heavy interest from teams, if they had not played for South Carolina this year? I mean, those guys were really, really good for the Gamecocks. And they retained, similar deal. They were able to retain, just about everybody impactful from the 2023 roster to 24. One exception may be like Mario Anderson, right? I mean, you can kind of go back and think, oh, man, Rocket and Mario, that would have been pretty cool, right? But for the most part, you got your key guys back, especially on defense. And lo and behold, you retain your key guys, you bring in some pieces, you're veteran, you're old, you're experienced, and they had a really good defensive year. So, yeah, player retention's huge in this. Easy to get the shiny object, kind of syndrome of we got to go out of the portal. And, look, that's important too. But, man, don't forget about the current roster. You got some guys on there too.
Yeah, and I think in today's world, man, too, you have to look at it more and more like an NFL-type situation where, yeah, it's cool to think about Rocket and Mario potentially teaming up at the same time. You are going to have more and more balance, I think is the best way to say it, in a roster standpoint, in that with the portal, with NIL, players may just say, well, look, hey, Rocket's coming in, I'm still going to go somewhere and be the guy. And I think we are seeing the rosters get balanced out more and more, throw in the college football playoff with so many teams getting in too, and you've got more parity than you've ever had. So, all right, y'all, coming up next, we're going to close it out with a couple final thoughts on where Carolina goes with the OC position and Citrus Bowl. You're listening to The Game. All right, guys, closing this thing out. Transfer portal Monday as players all around the country enter the portal. So far, so good for the Gamecocks. All healthy transfers to this point as South Carolina looks to maintain the momentum they had going into this season and let it pay off by continuing to add players during this just sprint to the transfer portal finish line. But, Chris, lots more going on, man. The OC situation we talked about a little bit earlier. Is Mike Shula, is it an easy just, hey, let's keep everything in place. Let's have some continuity and go with him? Or do you go outside? We'll see what Beamer decides to do. Certainly is sitting in a good spot there. I would dare say you're probably getting more interest in that job than you have at any point in terms of your just place in college football right now.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of it obviously ties into Lenore Sellers. But here's my complete speculation on it, Chris. And this also dives off of some of what you reported on Gamecock Central, that Shula is definitely in the mix. Like sometimes you can you may hear, no, we're probably not going that direction. Definitely in the mix. Here's what I wonder. I'm going to speculate. I wonder if it's like, let's see who, like if there is just a, are you serious? Like this guy isn't, like there's just a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
You have to consider them, right? And in today's college football world, we're seeing head coaches say, I'd rather just go call plays.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you got to be a little patient if you're Shane Beamer. But you do have an excellent candidate right here in-house.
And you don't have to decide right this second. I think from a timing standpoint, the transfer portal is open, right? And so you think about the nature of transfer portal recruiting, and you mentioned earlier correctly how this thing moves pretty fast, right? At the beginning of the portal window, you may have some guys that, hey, I'm going to schedule these 4 or 5 visits, get in, or you're not in. Got to figure that out. Sometimes if the time squeezes down towards the end of the portal window, you might have not long to get a guy in on campus, be able to get the transcripts, all that. So this thing's really condensed, and so it's a business decision. You don't have 2, 3, 4 years to build a relationship with the guy. Now, you may have a pre-existing relationship like Dane Key from Kentucky. He's been here several times. No Shane Beamer.
Officially in the portal now, by the way.
Gamecocks were number 2 in his recruitment. He's from Lexington, Kentucky. He picked Kentucky, right? There are cases like that, but other times you got guys coming on campus, and one of their questions, if it's an offensive player, is, well, what are you going to do on offense? And you can say, hey, here's what we did last year. Our OC's leaving to take a head coaching job because we had so much success. Like, you're going to throw all those things in, right? Hey, here's Lenore Sellers. It'll be fine. But if they want to go deeper, and it depends. Like, we went through this in 2022. When before Dow Loggins was hired, South Carolina had some time in that portal window. Wasn't a long time, but they had some time, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, where they didn't have an OC. And I don't think it had a huge impact. But, man, right now, with going 9-3, having Sellers, some of the guys in the portal, the momentum that you have, you would love to be able to articulate a plan, right? Now, that doesn't mean you put some guy in just because of that. But the point is, you can be patient. And so I do think I've heard those 2 things you mentioned, Wes, that Shula's going to have a great shot. But I've also heard there's going to be some really good interest in this job. I mean, how many OCs out there would be like, I'll coach Lenore Sellers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to check that out.
Yeah, and I'm curious, too. So one of the questions we've seen about Shula is, hey, can this guy recruit? And, I think that's valid for fans to ask that. At the same time, and yes, if you're going to be an offense coordinator, if you're going to be paid what that goes for these days, yes, you're going to be expected to recruit. However, to me, especially the way things can be structured now, that is much more about, hey, take care of your position. Recruit quarterbacks, meet with offensive players while they're on campus. I mean, this year we didn't even have December recruiting in terms of like in-home visits with prospects. So, to me, it's obviously important, but for an offensive coordinator, it's more about, can you develop quarterbacks? Can you build an offense? Can you call plays on game day? If you have the personality, if you're a good person and you're willing to work with just your quarterback room recruiting, the rest of all that will take care of itself. That's not a position where you're saying the recruiting is the most important aspect of all this at all, because that's one of the few spots where you would say, Chris, that it's not.
Yeah, you got to go out and get your guys. Will there be some recruiting, questions to answer with Loggins leaving with a guy like Jared Curtis from 2026? Maybe, but we'll see how that plays out.
All right, here's Chris. I'm Wes. Thank y'all so much for joining us here. We kept the train on the tracks without Tyler. Tyler will be back tomorrow. This has been the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs.
All right, 11:55 here on the game. It's lunchtime. Not great weather outside, but, it is ideal weather, I think. This kind of dreary, rainy weather, it always makes me want something hot. So a hot, delicious, steamed Firehouse sub sounds outstanding. You can use the Rapid Rescue to go. Avoid the wait and order online. They actually have a new limited time offer. New sub drop, as they put it. And yeah, breaking news here on the game. Indulge in the new French dip with premium roast beef, caramelized onion, melted cheese, and hot au jus to dip it in. You can also get double points today when you use firehousesubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app. Super easy to do it. Just register for a free account. Double points at participating locations. 15 different locations all around the Midlands. No matter where you're at in the Midlands, there's a Firehouse Subs closest to you. Go check it out, firehousesubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app.
Halftime show, Terry Ford hanging out, David Dare here for a little bit with us, punching some buttons up as we go till 3. I go till 2. And then my good pal Elijah Campbell is going to come in here and do the last hour of the halftime show, leading into the postgame show. Now, tomorrow on the postgame show, 3 o'clock, right out the chute, right off the jump. Still the athletic director at South Carolina for right now. Ray Tanner will hop on with Jay and Elijah on the postgame show. That's tomorrow at 3. A lot of stuff going on, obviously, in the world of Gamecocks. We'll get you caught up on transfer portal stuff, what's going on, who's put their name in the portal for South Carolina, who the Gamecocks targets might be of guys in the portal. And we talked about this earlier today on the Extra Point as I jumped in for Tyler, who for some reason wanted a day off. South Carolina obviously is a much better spot this year to go portal hunting. Last year, you're sitting at 5-7, had an underwhelming year you didn't expect to happen to you. Now you're going from strength. A year where you were in the mix for the college football playoff. You could be a 10-win team if you can bag the Citrus Bowl on New Year's Eve against Illinois. Program has got some really good momentum. You've seen transfer portal guys come in and thrive, like a Kyle Kennard, a Demetrius Knight, a Rocket Sanders. You know, if you're an offensive player, a skill position guy, you have a young quarterback with exciting potential and upside in Lenore Sellers. So there's a lot of good stuff for this. And we'll talk more about maybe some of the possible targets for South Carolina and some of the guys in the portal. Look, no one surprising is in the portal for South Carolina. I mean, again, DJ Braswell, he wants more playing time as a running back, wants an opportunity to start or get significant carries. He wants to go find that somewhere. Totally understand that. DeBron Gatling, I mean, you came in this past season as a wide receiver and you redshirted, and now you see South Carolina bring in, 4 or 5 wide receivers in this recruiting class. You're like, numbers ain't in my favor. I'm going to go somewhere else where maybe I can get a better opportunity to get some run. Totally understand. Guys who are going in the portal are guys who want more opportunities. Makes sense. We haven't lost any